Hello everyone, it is Tuesday, it's 12:30. I'm just going to slide you right over there. And that means it's time for another episode of First Chapter Fun. How is everyone? I hope I'm going live. I don't know why it's so... I look like I'm sitting in the dark on Facebook, and Instagram has filters, so I look a heck of a lot better on Instagram. But anyway, I hope I've gone live. I should be live. I should be everywhere. I think so. Things might not be working on Instagram. Things don't seem to be working on Facebook that well either. So this is an interesting start to broadcasting. Let me see what's going on. Oh, I see myself on Facebook. I see no comments, which is strange. So I'm going to just wait and see if I can do something on Instagram. So bear with me for a second, because I might have to... Oh, hi Lynn and Grace. Let me see. I see Lynn and Grace on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram, why do you do this to us? I'm going to try this again on Instagram, so bear with me while I do this. I'm going to go live again on Instagram, I think. Checking connection, and let's see if it works. Says I'm live. Yes, I'm live. Oh, every week, I tell you, every week, Instagram or Facebook throws us for a loop. But here we are. Hi, Joe. Joe has found us. I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm just going to move something out of the way so I can actually see the comments now. I don't know what was going on with Instagram just then, but it was... That's always the technology, isn't it? You think it's all going to go well. You set it up exactly the way you've set it up forever, and then it doesn't work. But that's all the fun of going live. Anyway, let me start again. It is Tuesday. It is 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, just after. And that means it's time for another episode of First Chapter Fun. Episode 132. So if this is your first time catching an episode of First Chapter Fun, my name is Hannah Mary McKinnon. I'm an author of psychological suspense novels, and with my partner in fictional crime, Hank Philippi Ryan, we broadcast twice a week, every Tuesday and every Thursday, on Instagram and on Facebook on two separate devices, because we're just that crazy. So if you haven't actually seen an episode before, don't you worry. We can make sure we can keep your to be read list completely out of control, and you can see all of the episodes. They are saved on Instagram in our IGTV, First Chapter Fun, and on the Facebook group as well, First Chapter Fun, under the media video section. So you can go and watch all of them, all of the episodes, all 131. Jen Jumper says, welcome rookies. And I see that none other than Claire McIntosh has joined. So that's a little bit intimidating for those of you who don't know Claire, who haven't read Claire. Where have you been? She wrote I Let You Go, which was a huge, huge hit. Hello, Claire. So lovely that you joined us. This is absolutely amazing. Such a thrill to have you join First Chapter Fun. So, as I mentioned, this is where Hank Philippi Ryan and I read twice a week. Occasionally we'll read you one of our books, but this is all about celebrating other authors. So we read the first chapter of a different book every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and you'll always find out which book we're going to read from on the Friday, actually, because on the Monday we post fun facts about the books. On Tuesday we read. On Wednesday there's a little promotional video that Hank always does. They're absolutely spectacular. Those happen on Monday and Wednesdays. Thursday we read. Fridays we have a welcome new members post, watch a reading post, and also fun facts about the authors. So you get to see a little bit behind the scenes. And this is where Hank and I read to you live, which is always intimidating, always fun. And we're so happy that so many of you are discovering this. And Kat Law says, Claire, I'm a little starstruck. Yeah, I know. Me too. And I've got to do this live. So this isn't intimidating at all. But that's fine. That's all. It's fine. It's fine. So how has everyone been? It's really cold here in Ontario. I live about 40 kilometres west of Toronto. And it's freezing. Not as freezing as it is on the prairies, though, in Alberta. It's absolutely... Stina Holmes, if you know Stina, great friend. She said it's about, I don't know, I think she said it's minus 45 or something. Don't ask me what that is in Fahrenheit. I haven't got a clue. Cold. Just don't go outside. Schools are cancelled. Buses are cancelled. It's not quite like that today, but it's pretty freezing here as well. But the sun is shining. Vaccines are on their way, we hope. My dad's getting his next one next week, his second one, and I will be very happy once that has happened. So, lots of people are joining. I see tons of people on Facebook. This is great. We have Susan and Margaret and Madonna, who says, hello everyone from Ottawa. Is it that cold in Ottawa as well? It's a bit nasty. Jamie and Ali on Facebook, they very often post when there are deals on the books that we've read. So thank you for doing that, Jamie and Ali. This is really lovely. And Jacqueline says, cold and snowy in Philly. And Susan says, we are all starstruck. I think that's, again, for Claire, not for me, right? Nah, not for me. I'm just kidding. We know it's for Claire. So let me tell you about today's book. I'm really excited about today's book. And reading it is going to be so much fun. And one of the things that I love, not only reading the books, which is so much fun to bring you these novels, but also the biographies of the authors. They're so interesting. And I have a little story about Joseph, because we are reading today Departure by Joseph Reid. It is the third book in the series. Question for you, Joseph, actually, because I know you're watching on both Facebook and Instagram. Should they be read in order, or can they be read in any order? There's a question for you, if you wouldn't mind popping that up in the comments. But this is book 3 in the series, and it is out now. In fact, they're all out now. So not right now, as I like to say, but once we're done, you can make sure to pick up a copy of Departure. So let me tell you a little bit about Joe, and I'm sure you will find his background as fascinating as I did. So get a load of this. Listen to this. The son of a Navy helicopter pilot, Joseph Reid chased great white sharks as a marine biologist. Why? Anyway, I will go back to that. Before becoming a patent lawyer who litigates multi-million-dollar cases for high-tech companies. He has flown millions of miles on commercial aircraft and has spent countless hours in airports around the world. A graduate of Duke University and the University of Notre Dame, he lives in San Diego with his wife and children. And you will find him, I need my glasses again, on Facebook, Joseph Reid, R-E-I-D, Joseph Reid Books 1. Instagram and Twitter, Joseph Reid Books, and that is also his website, Joseph Reid. And of course, we only ever read with the author and the publisher's permission. So thank you very much, Joe, for letting us read for you today. Such a thrill. And also thank you to Amazon, Thomas and Mercer, who have agreed to Hank and I reading this book. So Departure is the third in the series. The first was Takeoff. The second was False Horizon, and they are both out now. All three of them are out now. And Joe says they stand alone, but there are reveals that help if you read them in order. So it's up to you if you go crazy and read them in any order, or if you need to read them in order, which is generally what I do for series. Not always, but depends which book I stumble across first. Another interesting thing about Joe is some of you may have heard of the 5 a.m. Writers Club. So there's a group of people group of authors who will get up and write at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not one of them. I work better late at night. And they get up at 5. So Joe has gone one better than that. He's not in the 5 a.m. Writers Club. No. He's in the 4 a.m. Writers Club. So he gets up at 4 in the morning to write. And I find that so incredible and so impressive that you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning when the rest of us, me, are still fast asleep to get up and work. I can get up early and read, but I find getting up early and writing it just doesn't fit well. So kudos to you, Joe, for writing 3 books, being part of the 4 a.m. Writers Club. It's quite extraordinary. And another fun fact about Joe and chasing great white sharks as a marine biologist, as you do, he told me that Jaws used to be their Christmas movie that they'd watch as a family. So I thought I'd share my Jaws story with you. So when I was about, I don't know, it must have been about 1980, so I was 9-ish, 81, 10, something like that. And Jaws was on. And my mum said, yeah, you can watch it. So I did. And there's a point in the book where Hooper, which is Richard Dreyfuss, goes down in the cage, right? And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember, but I think in the book, does he die? I think he dies. But anyway, Mum said, listen, you just pop out of the room because something nasty is coming up. And then he doesn't die. So, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it. So Mum calls me back into the room, back into the living room, right at the moment where the captain, Quint, is, waist deep inside of Jaws. And since that moment, I have a very healthy fear and a very healthy respect of all things sharkish. And I could not even go into a swimming pool. I was even afraid to use the loo when I was about 10 because I thought a shark was going to come up and bite my bum or something. I don't know. It was ridiculous. So I have gone scuba diving, not just in lakes, but in the ocean as well, in Thailand and in Corsica. And it's one of my favourite things to do. I absolutely love it. But I'm always glad when I can get back on the boat because I'm terrified of sharks. Sharks, which I figure if I don't go in the ocean, I should be okay. Bears, I figure, well, we live in Ontario, so, depending on where I go in Ontario, I'm mostly okay. And raisins. I hate raisins, but that's a story for another day. So let me tell you about Departure, get away from my silly shark stories, and tell you about the book. And this is a fun one. I mean, they're always fun on First Chapter Fun, obviously, but I love prepping for this one. So listen to this. The Amazon Charts best-selling series continues as Air Marshal Seth Walker hunts a potential terrorist who could hold the key to the darkest chapter of his own past. When an electrical engineer from one of America's premier tech companies disappears inside the San Francisco International Airport before an overseas flight, Air Marshal Seth Walker is called in to investigate. With the clock ticking down and questions multiplying at every turn, Walker can't afford to fail. The lives of all 200,000 passengers inside SFO may hang in the balance. As he races through crowded concourses, desperately searching for clues, Walker can sense this is no routine missing persons case. But as he digs even deeper into the young man's background, the tangle of contradictions he finds is confounding. Is the engineer the victim of a crime or the perpetrator of one? As the case forces Walker to confront his own demons and the reason he fled his former life in industry, finding this man may mean exposing his own darkest secret. I'll show you the cover again. Departure by Joe Reid. I'm going to keep my glasses on because I'm blind. So settle in, buckle up, put your seat trays back up into the vertical position or whatever it is. It's been so long since I've flown, I don't even remember what the lingo is. But let me read you Departure by Joseph Reid. This is Chapter 1. Thursday, February 23rd. More often than you'd think, the troublemakers sit in first class. Not the upgraders. They're so thankful for a golden ticket to the promised land, they stay on best behaviour in hopes of proving they belong in the club full time. Most of them are business types who simply want to eat their free meal and finish their work. No, it's the ones who pay full freight. They think that entitles them to be all kinds of demanding. Whether it's some rich bitch type complaining about the white wine selection, Or a slick lawyer with sterling silver cufflinks who wants to talk on his cell through takeoff. Something about the extra wide seats seems to deprive people of their senses. Watching stuff like that go down, I always feel for the flight attendants. FAA regs force them to handle everything from nausea to a terrorist takeover, while passengers expect them to be attractive, attentive hand servants. For their trouble, they pull down maybe $20 an hour. And that's only for flight time, door closed to door open. Despite my sympathy, though, I keep my mouth shut. An air marshal's job is to blend in, not stick out. And while the crazy woman who'd exposed my identity and almost killed me a few months back had ended my run as a rank and file air marshal, it was hard to turn the training off. Even in my new tongue-twisting role as tactical law enforcement liaison and principal investigator, I tried to keep a low profile. That morning's flight was an exception. We were a pre-dawn departure from DFW, the plane only about half full. I felt exhausted, but not from the early hour. The past 4 days with my godkids in Fort Worth had been fun. Thanks to an unexpected heatwave, I'd spent a bunch of times horsing around in the pool, flipping them over my head and launching them into the air to have them splash down a moment later. All that action had left my muscles slightly sore, but otherwise my time with them had been invigorating. Seeing 5-year-old Rachel assemble some master-level Legos, watching 9-year-old Michael hop the curb on his bike, it made me realise how fast they were growing up. What had left me drained was my time with their mum, Shirley. Not because she wasn't nice, exactly the opposite. She was always far more welcoming and trusting than I deserved. She'd opened her home to me years ago. Now she wanted nothing more than to mother me about the dating scene, my new career, my life in Los Angeles. Truth be told, I didn't even mind any of that. If we could have limited our conversation to what was going on in my life, I'd have gladly allowed Shirley to pry into my privacy all she wanted. No. The past was the problem, and how diligently I needed to avoid discussing it with her. The quiet times, after the kids went to bed each night, were the worst. Shirley would want to sit on the porch and visit. Those talks invariably turned to Clarence, the kid's father, and my old mentor, her husband, the dead man between us. His suicide had left her with a ton of unresolved questions. But while I understood her desire to plough over it, to process things, I had to tread carefully. Clarence had killed himself at work, and I'd been the one who'd found his body. There were details Shirley didn't know that would only make things worse if she did. They turned every conversation into a minefield, every silent smile she gave me, each invitation to go on with what I was saying, would cause my heart to catch in my throat as I hoped that damned mother's intuition of hers hadn't caught on to something, praying I hadn't let something slip. It was exhausting. So I was looking forward to being home. I hadn't surfed in a week, and while I needed to check in at the office when I arrived, my calculations said I could be on my board before lunch if things broke right. Because this had been a personal trip, I'd booked my own seats and decided to splurge for some extra legroom in first class. When I saw what we were flying, I knew I'd picked the right day to upgrade. Instead of the 737 you'd usually draw for a short-haul route, we somehow ended up with one of the brand new 787-9 Dreamliners they normally say for international flights. The Dreamliner is a double-aisle, wide body plane. It's so big it can load passengers through 3 doors simultaneously if the airport gate is equipped with a multi-pronged jet bridge, which ours wasn't. In coach, they use a 3-3-3 configuration. But up front, there's just one angled seat on either side of the aisle. I drew 3A, the third window on the left. Although I'd heard good things, I hadn't flown on a Dreamliner, so I spent the first few minutes after boarding playing with the fold-down seat and examining all the little storage compartments. Even better, the cabin was equipped with the new electronically dimmable windows I'd read about but hadn't seen in action yet. For the technological marvel that is a jumbo jet, a £1,000,000 slab of steel that can fly, the plastic sheets they use as window shades always struck me as a cheap and tacky solution. Those things seem like they might rip at any moment. Half of them become twisted in their tracks and get stuck. They don't even block out all the light. The plastic is translucent, especially when the sun shines directly on them. The Dreamliner's designers, though, had taken window shades to a whole new level. Its windows contain a special panel filled with a chemical gel that changes colour when exposed to electricity. The more voltage, the darker the gel becomes, all the way to an opaque black. A button below the window lets passengers dim or brighten their own windows, or the flight attendant can control all of them at once from a switch in the galley. I'm a tinkerer and an inventor in my spare time, so toying with the window gave me a few ideas. I pulled out my pad and mechanical pencil from my carry-on to make some notes. As I did, habit took over, and I found myself scanning the boarding passengers in my peripheral vision. Lots of families with young kids, enough that I figured it must be a school break or something. Other than a couple of muscle-bound guys headed back into coach, I didn't see anyone I'd classify as a potential threat. The guy across the aisle from me, though, seemed like he was going to be a handful for Amelia, the flight attendant working up front. He boarded late, carrying the jacket to his navy chalk-striped suit over his arm. Tall and broad-shouldered, with massive hands, he might have been an athlete once. Now, though, his body had atrophied to a thick, doughy frame with a belly roll protruding over his belt. Although the contrast collar of his shirt was unbuttoned, sweat had moistened his forehead and created two dark stains in the pale blue cloth under his armpits. Huffing and puffing, the man's first action upon reaching his seat was to check all the nearby overheads for a home for his rollerboard. Although this held up the line behind him, he didn't seem to care in the slightest. After stowing the bag, he stomped back to row 3 and collapsed into his seat. Once the backlog of passengers dispersed, Amelia worked her way over. "Can I take that for you, Mr. Abbott?" The man didn't hand her the jacket so much as he allowed her to remove it from his lap. His only verbal response was, "Jack and Coke." If Amelia felt offended, it didn't show. She simply swept a lock of her hair back behind her ear and carried the jacket forward, hanging it in the front closet before disappearing into the galley and returning with his drink. Abbott took an immediate swig, his eyes locked on Amelia. From the rosy tint of his cheeks, I wondered if Abbott had been held up finishing a round at the terminal bar. Either way, he made short work of the brown liquid. Soon the glass contained nothing but rattling cubes. After Amelia retrieved Abbott's empty glass to prepare for pushback, he reclined and closed his eyes. I figured he'd sleep. A lot of nervous flyers suck down booze to relax themselves into passing out. But when the chime sounded to indicate we'd cleared 10,000 feet, Abbott was awake again and fidgeting. Most people requested coffee during the first drink service. I've got a medical condition that keeps me from having caffeine, so I got water. Despite the pre-dawn hour, Abbott stuck with Jack and Coke, belting a second while Amelia prepped food in the galley, then swigging a third with his meal. He and I both got the southwestern omelette. It was spicy. They'd mixed in jalapeno or something, but I was pretty sure that wasn't what caused the pink to spread from Abbott's cheek to the rest of his face. When Amelia came to clear Abbott's tray, he leered up at her and planted his right palm firmly on the side of her hip. Amelia's immediate reaction was to step back across the aisle toward me. Clever move. It made her too far to reach, and Abbott's arm dropped to his side. But as she turned up the aisle, Abbott wound his arm and spanked her hard. Nearly jumping from the impact, Amelia dashed up front, darted through the curtain to the galley, and yanked it closed behind her. I'd seen enough. I balled my right hand into a fist and glared across the aisle. I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I'm not exactly small. Normally, between that, my shaved head, and the tattoos running up and down my arms, a good stern look will put someone in their place. Not Abbott. "Mind your own business," he said, and went back to his drink. 2 more gulps, and it disappeared like the others. Left with nothing but ice, Abbott began fidgeting again. He tugged at his cuffs, scratched his goatee, wiped his brow. He swirled and rattled the cubes around inside the glass, then loudly slurped up the few remaining drops. Finally, he unclipped his seatbelt and rose to his feet. I watched carefully as he went forward, but a moment after he ducked through the curtain. The forward lavatory light switched from green to red, and I heard the door close and a lock with an audible clack. When he didn't re-emerge quickly, I turned back to my sketchpad. Eventually, I noticed the lavatory sign switch colour again in my peripheral vision. When Abbott didn't reappear at our row within a few seconds, I glanced up. The curtain separating the cabin from the galley billowed slightly. I tucked my pad and pencil into the seat back pocket and stood. Knowing how the aircraft floor can transmit vibrations, I stepped lightly on my way forward, up on the balls of my feet. Quick glances to either side showed that none of the other passengers were paying any attention. A decent number had reclined and fallen asleep. Not wanting to change that, I stepped to the bulkhead and ducked through the curtain in one motion. Amelia stood at the opposite end of the galley, backed against the fuselage. Her eyes were wide, her hand drawn to her mouth. Abbott stood between us, blocking the passage and nearly eclipsing her. He hadn't touched her yet, but his left hand was reaching in her direction. "Hey, buddy," I tried to keep the tone friendly. "You don't want to do that." "Fuck off." Abbott rocked forward on his feet, leaning closer to her. "I'm serious, come back to your seat. She'll get you some coffee. You can sober up." He glanced back over his shoulder. "Go fuck yourself." "Don't make me." Before I could finish, Abbott whipped around, leading with the back of his left hand in a clumsy but dangerous kind of karate chop. I leaned back to dodge the swing. As Abbott turned, though, I got a glimpse at what had caused Amelia's distress. His pants were unzipped, his genitals protruding prominently from the open fly. Abbott's missed swing nearly cost him his balance. With all his weight up on one foot, he teetered, and for a moment I thought he might fall. But somehow Abbott steadied himself, and a new wave of rage consumed him. He gritted his teeth, nostrils flared, a low noise sounded in his throat. He seized a glass carafe off the shelf to his right and smashed its bottom against the metal edge of the counter. Then he turned to me. Although he was drunk and clumsy, Abbott's eyes had a wild look. The broken glass had formed several distinct points with razor-sharp edges between them. I immediately thought about the Sig Sauer P229 concealed in my waistband, but decided the quarters were too cramped. With Amelia standing directly behind Abbott, even if I got off a solid shot, the bullet stood a decent chance of passing through him and hitting her. He took a step toward me, brandishing the jagged carafe. As I retreated a step, I nearly tripped over something. My eyes darted to the floor, and I spotted one of those heavy-duty plastic restaurant racks for drinking glasses standing on one end. Amelia must have set it there while preparing for service. I scooped the rack up with my left hand, slipping my fingers through the handle hole on the side while bracing the rack against my forearm as a kind of shield. Abbott jabbed the carafe at me once, then twice. The second time, I made sure the rack hit the edge of the carafe. I needed to know if it would hold up. Thankfully, the glass scraped the plastic, but didn't slice through. As if realising that might embolden me, Abbott passed the carafe from one hand to the other, turning it in his grip so it pointed downward. Then, raising it over his head, he charged. In 2 quick steps, Abbott managed to gather almost all his mass behind the blow. Even though I braced myself and blocked the carafe with the rack, the force drove me down onto one knee. Thinking he had me, Abbott began smashing the bottle down against the plastic. Shards of glass rained down on me with each impact, and I had to look away to protect my eyes. That was when I spotted it. Amelia had been loading dirty trays into one of the rolling carts tucked beneath the galley shelves. The cart door was still open. I jabbed my free hand inside and fumbled around until I felt something cold and metallic on one of the trays. A fork. I've used forks as weapons before. Clutching it tightly, I jabbed the tines into the back of Abbott's knee as hard as I could. He simultaneously howled and crumpled on that side. I sprang to my feet and backhanded the rack against his wrist, dislodging the carafe. My eyes followed it to the floor where it bounced and rolled out of reach. Before I could take another breath, a hollow metallic gonging erupted to my side. Turning, I found Amelia standing over Abbott's head, clutching one of the airplane's stainless steel coffee pots. Although dazed, Abbott shook off the impact and tried to turn toward her. Amelia raised the pot with both hands and brought it down again on the crown of Abbott's head. This time he slumped to the floor, unconscious. "Nice shot," I said. Visibly trembling, she raised the pot so that it dangled from one finger. The dent in its side was unmistakable. "They'll probably fire me for that," she said. Then her mouth turned up in a surprised smile. "But I think it might have been worth it." I snatched the pot off her finger. Cradling it in my left arm, I wiped the handle with the tail of my untucked t-shirt and then gripped it several times with my own hand. "There," I said. "Nothing for you to get in trouble for." That was the first chapter. Let me find that again. My iPad's gone to sleep. Of Departure by Joseph Reid. What else is going to happen? What else is going to happen to Seth Walker, Air Marshal, and what has happened to him? Well, you can find out because this book is available now, as are the other 2 first books in the series. So that was today's read. So much fun. I forgot to say at the beginning, well, I did mention that Joe's here and you can ask him tons of questions, of course. I know it's a bit late now because I've read, but I hope you were, because I saw lots of comments coming up and down. Judy says, "No, you can't stop there. You know the rules. First chapter fun is it's the first chapter. Sometimes the first, second, third, depending on how long they are." That was part of the first chapter. Kathleen Fox says, "Wow, that was great." Joe says, "Thank you." No, thank you, Joe, for letting us read for you. Jen Jumber, one of our favourite librarians, says, "Great story and great read. To be read pile even taller." Yeah, sorry. Not sorry. Hank and I always say that's our mission, to keep your to be read piles completely out of control. Rena says that was intense. Yes, it was. It was fun reading it, and it was also, I've been on a Dreamliner when I go and visit family in Switzerland the past few flights, you know, when we were allowed to, with a Dreamliner, and it's insane. It's as these, you know, as aircrafts go, it's a beautiful machine. Not that I'm an aircraft, you know, aficionado or anything, but it's a wonderful plane. And when there was turbulence, the captain said, you know, fasten your seatbelts, there's some turbulence, and it was nothing. It was just, you know, it was great, because I don't like turbulence or sharks or bears. Anyway, Susan says I'm hooked already. Tucker Luke says, "Wow, gonna get this one." And Tracy Clark, we read from Tracy's book as well, says somebody's asking for it. Yeah, no kidding. I cheered when Amelia smacked Abbott over the head with the coffee pot. I thought that was well justified. Quite right too. Once again, that was Departure by Joe Reid. Thank you very, very much for letting us read. Joe says, "I love your voice for Abbott." Yeah, doing the voices is one of the fun bits. It's really fun to read out loud. Not that I am by any stretch of the imagination ever a professional audiobook narrator, but it's fun to dabble. So thank you for letting us do this for you today. Let me tell you about Thursday's book. We have a cozy mystery, The Corpse with the Crystal Skull by Kathy Ace. This is Thursday's read, which is going to be so much fun. Kathy is also, it lives in Canada and is originally from the UK, from Wales more specifically. So this is the book that we will bring you on Thursday. And we have reads, Hank and I have reads scheduled way into 2021. So stick with us and you will never, ever, ever wonder what you should be reading or what you could be reading, because we will always bring you books, hopefully new books, new to you, or by new to you authors, from new authors, from authors who have debuts coming out, from authors who have multiple books already. First chapter fun. Just, it's a fun place to be. Once again, Departure by Joseph Reid. That was today's book. And on Thursday, The Corpse with the Crystal Skull by Kathy Ace. So I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And I hope that you will join us again on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And so, until then, as always, please stay safe, stay kind, and we will see you on Thursday. Thank you for watching.